The avoidant person who disappeared from your life, who ignored you, who created distance, or ended things, or withdrew into silence, who made you feel forgotten, or dismissed, or unimportant, comes back into your life for one primary reason that underlies all their justifications and all their explanations and all their surface motivations. They come back because they've lost control of the situation and they need to restore it. Because your absence, or your moving on, or your visible thriving, or your complete unavailability has created dynamic where they no longer dictate the terms, where they're no longer the one with power, where the narrative has shifted from them being the person who chose distance to them being the person who lost something valuable. This need to restore control is the core driver of their return, even when they're not consciously aware of it, even when they genuinely believe they're returning, because they miss you, or because they've realized what they lost, or because they want to make things right. The avoidant person's entire defensive system is organized around maintaining control. Control over distance, control over intimacy, control over their vulnerability, control over the narrative of who needs whom and who has power in the dynamic. When they ignored you, when they created distance, when they withdrew, they were exercising this control. They decided when to be close and when to be distant. They determined the level of connection. They controlled whether you had access to them or not. This control felt safe to them because it meant they couldn't be abandoned or rejected. They were always the one creating the distance, never the one being left. But something shifted. Perhaps you stopped pursuing them and started focusing on yourself. Perhaps you moved on visibly and publicly in ways they could observe. Perhaps you established firm boundaries that made clear you weren't available to them anymore. Perhaps you found someone new who treats you better. Perhaps you simply disappeared from their life as completely as they disappeared from yours. But you did it with finality that communicated you were done rather than just hurt. Whatever the specific trigger, the shift-created situation where they're no longer in control, where you've taken the power they assumed they held, where the dynamic has reversed from them being the one who decides to them being the one who lost and who wants back what they no longer have access to. This loss of control is intolerable to the avoidance psychological system, and their return is fundamentally about attempting to restore the control they've lost, about reasserting their power in the dynamic, about ensuring they still matter to you and can still affect you and can still have access to you if they decide they want it. They realized they lost control and need to restore it. The primary and fundamental reason the avoidant person comes back after ignoring you is that they've recognized they've lost control of the situation, of the narrative, of their access to you, of the power dynamic, and their return is attempt to restore this control, even if they're not consciously aware this is their motivation. Understanding how loss of control triggers their return reveals both the psychology driving their behavior and why their return is about them and their needs rather than about genuine transformation or readiness for healthy relationship with you. The avoidant realizes they've lost control when you stop being available, when you stop pursuing them, when you stop being affected by their absence in ways they can observe or influence. Throughout the period when they were ignoring you, they maintained psychological sense of control because they believed you were waiting, you were hoping, you were still emotionally attached and available if they decided to return. This belief gave them power and safety. They could have distance without permanent loss. They could ignore you without losing you. They could maintain their defended position while keeping you as option. But when you stop waiting, when you stop hoping, when you make yourself genuinely unavailable, this control evaporates. They realize they can't just decide to come back and have you be there. They recognize that the power to determine the relationship's terms is no longer in their hands. They've lost the control they assumed they had, and this loss triggers panic and desperate need to restore what was lost. The loss of control becomes apparent to the avoidant when they observe specific changes in your behavior or your availability. They notice you've stopped reaching out completely, stopped liking their social media, stopped asking mutual friends about them. They see you've blocked them or made yourself unavailable through other means. They hear through others that you're dating someone new or that you're clearly over them and moving forward. They attempt to reach out casually, and you don't respond, or you respond with such distance that it's clear you're not interested in re-engaging. Each of these observations proves that the control they thought they had, the control to ignore you and then return when convenient, no longer exists. You've changed the terms. You've taken away their assumed access. You've demonstrated that their absence has consequences they cannot simply undo by deciding to come back. The need to restore control manifests as their return, as their reaching out, as their attempts to re-engage with you. The return is not primarily about missing you or wanting genuine relationship, though they may experience those feelings as well. The return is fundamentally about restoring their sense of power and control in the dynamic, about proving to themselves that they still matter to you, that they can still affect you, that they still have access if they want it. They need to know that they're still important, that their presence or absence still impacts you, that you're not completely beyond their influence. This need drives them to reach out, to test whether you'll respond, to attempt to pull you back into dynamic where they have power. The attempt to restore control takes various forms depending on what they believe will be most effective. They might reach out with casual message designed to seem innocent, asking how you are, mentioning something that reminded them of you, suggesting you catch up as friends. This casual approach is an attempt to get their foot in the door, to see if you're still accessible, to restore some level of connection without having to be vulnerable or to admit they want you back. They might reach out with apology or acknowledgement of how they treated you, using contrition as strategy to make you lower your boundaries and give them access again. They might reach out with declaration of missing you or wanting you back, using emotional intensity to override your boundaries and to reassert their importance in your life. Regardless of the specific approach, the underlying motivation is the same. They need to restore control by getting you to respond, to engage, to show that you're not completely done with them. The avoidant's need to restore control is also about managing their own abandonment wounds that are activated when they're the ones who have been left or who have lost something, rather than being the ones who created distance. The avoidant developed their patterns in response to abandonment experiences in childhood. They protect against abandonment by being the one who leaves, who creates distance, who cares less. But when you've genuinely moved on, when you've made yourself unavailable, when you're the one who is gone, it activates their core abandonment wound. They're experiencing the very thing they've been defending against, being left, being forgotten, not mattering. This activation is intolerable and creates desperate need to undo the abandonment by getting you back, by proving they haven't been abandoned, but are actually the one who is wanted and chosen. The return is an attempt to manage their abandonment wound by restoring dynamic where they're in control, rather than being the one who is left behind. The need to restore control reveals that the return is fundamentally selfish, about their needs and their psychological comfort, rather than about your well-being or about genuine desire for healthy relationship with you. They're not coming back because they've done work on themselves and are ready to show up differently. They're not coming back because they've developed capacity to sustain intimacy or to be a consistent partner. They're coming back because the current situation, where you're unavailable and they've lost control, is uncomfortable for them and they need to change it. Their comfort, their need for control, their psychological equilibrium matters more to them than whether re-engaging with you serves your healing or your well-being. This selfish motivation is why their return should be met with extreme caution and firm boundaries rather than with hope or openness. They're experiencing scarcity and loss aversion that makes you suddenly valuable. The second major reason the avoidant person comes back after ignoring you is that they're experiencing scarcity and loss aversion that makes you suddenly seem more valuable than you seemed when you were available, triggering desire for what they've lost that's more intense than their desire ever was when they had access to you. Understanding how scarcity and loss aversion operate in the avoidance psychology reveals why your unavailability makes them want you, and why this wanting is not same as being capable of sustaining healthy relationship with you. The avoidant experiences scarcity when you become genuinely unavailable, when it's clear they cannot easily access you or restore connection at will. Scarcity principle in psychology states that things become more desirable when they're rare or when access to them is limited. The avoidant, despite their dismissive patterns, is still subject to this psychological principle. When you were available, when you were pursuing them, or waiting for them, or making yourself accessible, there was no scarcity. They could have you whenever they wanted. This abundance of access made you less valuable in their perception, because human psychology devalues what's readily available and highly values what's scarce or hard to obtain. But when you remove yourself completely, when you make yourself unavailable, when it's clear they cannot have you, scarcity is created. You're no longer abundant and accessible. You're rare and difficult or impossible to obtain. This scarcity makes you suddenly more valuable, more desirable, more wanted than you were when you were available. The avoidant experiences loss aversion when they recognize they've actually lost you, rather than just maintaining distance under their control. Loss aversion is psychological principle that losses loom larger than equivalent gains, that people feel the pain of losing something more intensely than they feel the pleasure of gaining something of equal value. When the avoidant was ignoring you, they didn't experience loss because they believed you were still accessible, still theirs to return to if they chose. But when they recognize you're actually gone, that they've lost you permanently, or at least lost the easy access they assumed they had, loss aversion is triggered. The pain of this loss feels more intense than the pleasure they felt when they had you, making them want you back with intensity that seems disproportionate to how much they valued you when you were available. This is not because you've become objectively more valuable, but because the psychology of loss makes losing you feel more painful than having you felt pleasurable. The combination of scarcity and loss aversion creates perfect storm that makes the avoidant suddenly want you desperately after a period of ignoring you. You've become scarce, which increases your perceived value, and they've lost you, which triggers pain of loss that's more intense than their pleasure of having you was. This combination can create obsessive quality to their wanting. They think about you constantly. They monitor your life. They feel desperate to get you back. This desperation feels like intense love or genuine desire, and the avoidant might interpret it as such, might believe they're finally recognizing your true value and are ready to commit. But this interpretation is wrong. The desperation is not evidence of developed capacity or genuine transformation. It's evidence of scarcity and loss aversion triggering desire that exists precisely because you're unavailable. The critical insight about scarcity-driven desire is that it tends to dissipate once scarcity is removed, meaning that if you become available again, if you take them back, their intense wanting will likely fade and their old patterns will reassert themselves. The wanting they feel now is contingent on your unavailability. It exists because they cannot have you. If you become available again, if the scarcity is removed, the The psychological conditions that created the intense desire will no longer exist. What replaces the scarcity-driven desire will likely be their original pattern, devaluing what's available, feeling trapped or suffocated by intimacy, withdrawing to restore their sense of independence. This pattern is why taking the avoidant back when they return, in state of scarcity-driven desperation, almost always leads to repeat of the original dynamics. The intensity they feel is real, but it's not sustainable because it's based on you being unavailable, not on genuine appreciation of you, or developed capacity to sustain intimacy. The avoidance scarcity-driven return is often accompanied by idealization of you and the relationship, where they remember only the positive aspects and forget or minimize the reasons they withdrew in the first place. When you're unavailable, when they're experiencing the loss, their brain engages in selective memory that emphasizes what was good about you and the relationship while downplaying or forgetting what made them uncomfortable. They remember how understanding you were, how patient, how you accepted them. They forget that this acceptance felt suffocating sometimes, that your patience felt like pressure, that your understanding made them feel obligated. They remember the good times, the moments of connection, the ways you made them feel seen. They forget the intimacy anxiety those moments triggered, the discomfort they felt when you got too close, the withdrawal patterns they enacted to restore distance. This idealization makes you seem perfect in retrospect, makes the relationship seem like it was an amazing thing they foolishly destroyed. But this idealization is fantasy created by your absence, not accurate reflection of their actual experience during the relationship. The scarcity and loss aversion that drive their return are evident in specific behaviors and statements they make when they come back. They tell you they've realized what they lost, that they didn't appreciate you when they had you, that they see now how special you are. They express regret about letting you go, about not fighting for the relationship, about their patterns that drove you away. They might make grand gestures or promises designed to prove their changed perspective. All of this can feel validating and can seem like recognition you deserved all along. But the crucial question is whether this recognition is based on genuine appreciation of who you are and genuine developed capacity to be different, or whether it's based on scarcity and loss that will fade once you're available again. In most cases, it's the latter. They're recognizing your value in your absence because absence creates scarcity, not because they've fundamentally changed their capacity to appreciate you or to sustain healthy relationship with you. They're testing if you're still available as backup option. The third major reason the avoidant person comes back after ignoring you is that they're testing whether you're still available as backup option, as safety net, as person they can return to if their other options don't work out, or if their defended isolation becomes too lonely. Understanding this testing motivation reveals the lack of genuine commitment in their return and the importance of maintaining firm boundaries that don't allow them to keep you as option without genuine partnership. The avoidant maintains backup options as psychological safety strategy that allows them to feel less vulnerable to abandonment while maintaining their defended distance from genuine commitment. They keep people somewhat in their life, somewhat accessible, without fully committing to anyone. This creates a situation where they feel less alone, but don't have to face the vulnerability and intimacy that committed relationship would require. When they were ignoring you, they might have assumed you would remain as backup option indefinitely, that you'd be there if they decided they wanted to return, that your availability was something they could count on without having to maintain it through consistent care and attention. But something has made them uncertain about whether you're still available as backup option. Perhaps you've established firm no contact, and they cannot tell if you're still thinking about them or have moved on completely. Perhaps they've seen or heard that you're dating someone new, and they're worried you might commit to this new person and be permanently unavailable. Perhaps enough time has passed that they recognize people usually move on, and they're worried you might have done the same. This uncertainty about your availability creates need to test, to reach out and see if you're still accessible, to find out if they still have you as option they can. Return to if they want. The testing return is characterized by low investment and ambiguous communication that allows them to assess your availability without committing to anything themselves. They reach out with casual message that could be interpreted as friendly reconnection or could be interpreted as romantic interest, depending on your response. They suggest getting together for coffee or for casual catch-up, framing it as platonic, but leaving opening for more if you seem interested. They ask about your life in ways that are probing for whether you're seeing anyone or whether you seem over them. They're testing the waters, gathering information about your availability and your openness to them, without revealing their own hand or committing to wanting genuine relationship with you. The testing return is fundamentally manipulative, even if the avoidant doesn't consciously recognize it as such. They're trying to determine if you're still option for them without offering you genuine commitment or partnership in return. They want to know if you're available without making themselves available. They want to assess if they still have access to you without doing the work that access should require, apologizing genuinely, taking responsibility, demonstrating changed behavior, committing to being different. The testing is an attempt to maintain their power and their options while requiring nothing from themselves. The appropriate response to testing return is to recognize it for what it is and to refuse to participate in dynamic where you're being kept as option. If they reach out with casual message, you either don't respond at all or you respond with such firm boundaries that it's clear you're not available for casual connection or for being backup option. If they suggest meeting up, you decline unless they're clear about wanting genuine relationship and willing to demonstrate through their behavior that they're capable of showing up differently. You don't provide them with information about your availability or your current relationship status that would allow them to assess whether you're a viable backup option. You don't engage with their testing because engaging serves their agenda of keeping you as option without serving your needs for genuine partnership or clear resolution. The testing return reveals the avoidant's continued selfishness and their continued prioritization of their needs over yours. They want to know if you're available as option for them, but they're not considering whether being kept as option serves your healing or your well-being. They want to restore their sense that they have backup if they need it, but they're not thinking about whether this dynamic is fair to you or healthy for you. Their return is about their comfort and their safety, not about your needs or about genuine care for you, as person with your own feelings and your own right to move forward unencumbered by their ambivalent presence in your life. What their return actually means and what it doesn't mean. The avoidant person's return after ignoring you has specific meanings and implications that are important to understand clearly, to protect yourself from misinterpreting their return as something it's not, and from making decisions based on hope rather than on reality. Understanding what their return actually means versus what it doesn't mean allows you to respond from place of clarity and self-protection rather than from place of wishful thinking. Their return means they're uncomfortable with the current situation where they've lost control or where you're unavailable or where they've experienced loss. This discomfort is real and is what's driving their return. They're not comfortable with you being gone completely. They're not comfortable with having lost access to you. They're not comfortable with not mattering to you anymore or not being able to affect you. This discomfort is evidence that you matter to them on some level, that the connection was real, that they're affected by losing you. But discomfort with loss is not the same as readiness for healthy relationship. Discomfort is not developed capacity. Being uncomfortable with consequences of their patterns is not same as having changed the patterns. Their return means they're experiencing feelings about you that are more intense than the feelings they experienced or allowed themselves to experience when you were available. The scarcity and loss aversion create genuine emotional intensity. They genuinely feel like they want you, like they miss you, like they made mistake. These feelings are real emotional experiences they're having. But feelings are not reliable indicators of behavior or capacity. The avoidant can feel intense desire for you while still lacking ability to sustain intimacy. They can feel genuine regret while still being unable to show up consistently. They can feel like they want relationship with you while still being terrified of the vulnerability it would require. Their feelings are real, but their feelings don't equal changed behavior or developed capacity. Their return means that something about the loss or about seeing you move forward has penetrated their defenses in ways that previous challenges to their patterns did not. The return indicates that losing you has affected them more deeply than your presence affected them, that your absence and your thriving have created impact that your availability and your care did not create. This is significant in sense that it proves you mattered and that the relationship was real. But it doesn't mean they've done the work to address the wounds and patterns that made them unable to receive what you offered when you were offering it. Impact and awareness are not the same as transformation and developed capacity. Their return does not mean they've changed or that they're ready for healthy relationship. This is the most important thing to understand clearly. Return is not evidence of change. Regret is not evidence of change. Missing you is not evidence of change. Saying they realize what they lost is not evidence of change. Evidence of change is sustained different behavior over a significant period of time. Evidence of change is being in therapy and doing deep work on attachment wounds. Evidence of change is demonstrating through actions over months, not through words in the moment of return, that they're capable of consistency, vulnerability, presence, communication. Unless they're bringing evidence of sustained work and changed behavior, their return is just their emotional reaction to loss and scarcity, not indication that different outcome would be possible this time. Their return does not mean you should take them back or give them another chance. The decision about whether to give them another chance should not be based on their return or their expressions of wanting you back. It should be based on whether they've demonstrated genuine change through sustained different behavior, whether they've done therapeutic work to address their attachment wounds, whether you've healed enough that re-engaging wouldn't derail your healing, whether you even want them back, or if you've moved beyond them. Their return creates opportunity for you to choose, but it doesn't mean choosing them is right choice. In most cases, maintaining your boundaries and continuing to move forward serves your well-being better than re-engaging with a person whose patterns hurt you and who hasn't demonstrated genuine capacity to be different. Their return does not erase or excuse the ignoring, the withdrawal, the pain they caused you through their patterns. The fact that they're back, that they're expressing regret, that they claim they've realized their mistake, doesn't undo the hurt they caused or excuse their behavior. They made choices that hurt you. They ignored you when you needed presence. They withdrew when you needed consistency. They prioritized their comfort over your well-being. Their return doesn't erase this history or make it okay. If you choose to engage with them, it should be with full awareness of what they did and what they're capable of, not with minimization of their past behavior because they're expressing regret in the present. Their return does not obligate you to respond, to explain yourself, to provide them with closure or conversation. You don't owe them your time, your emotional energy, your explanation of why you're not interested. your engagement with their attempt to reconnect. They ignored you, they created the distance, they ended or damaged the relationship through their patterns. Their decision to return doesn't create obligation for you to receive them or to help them process their regret or to make them feel better about what they did. Your obligation is to yourself, to protecting your healing, to making choices that serve your well-being. If that means not responding to their return, if that means maintaining your boundaries without explanation, you have every right to do so. Their return ultimately means they're experiencing consequences of their patterns, and they're attempting to manage those consequences in ways that serve their psychological needs. This is information about them and about their process, but it's not necessarily information that should change your choices or your boundaries. You can acknowledge that they're affected, that they're uncomfortable, that they're experiencing regret, while still maintaining firm boundary that you're not available for re-engagement. You can recognize their return for what it is: attempt to restore control, response to scarcity and loss, testing of your availability, without interpreting it as genuine transformation or as reason to hope for different outcome. You can let them sit with the consequences of having ignored you and having lost you, consequences that might teach them something valuable for their future, even if those lessons come too late to benefit your relationship with them. Their return is their problem to manage, their discomfort to sit with, their lesson to learn. Your job is simply to protect yourself, to continue moving forward, to make choices based on what serves your healing and your future, rather than based on their belated recognition of what they lost or their uncomfortable feelings about having lost it.